What's up guys, Duarte here with another Marvel Strike Force video, and in this video we are going to talk about the best ISO weight for the Web Warriors. We are going to talk about the best ISO weight option when you have the full team, and also other individual options that you might have in case you want to use them on different game modes or get a little bit more out of their abilities. You can find these recommendations always on my Discord. There are infographics and spreadsheets with all this information. They are updated at least once a month, so they are always up to the meta. Okay, so let's get started, and we are going to start off with the most important character on this team, which is the OG SpiderMan. Now, in terms of ISO weight for this guy, and if you are using the full team, Raider can be a good option. He attacks multiple targets with his special and with his basic, and he doesn't require focus for his ultimate, and he can also do a nice amount of damage with his ultimate. Now, in this team, the Web Warriors will have an additional 30% crit chance and also an additional 50% crit damage. And this is why we want to use a Raider on him and in some of the other characters to maximize these passive abilities that grant these additional effects that will help you to get rid of the enemies way quicker. Now, if you are having some problem in terms of focus, because it's very important for OG Spider-Man to apply this defense down and slow for 2 turns, this ability and applying it will help quite a lot the other Web Warriors doing their things. So in case your OG Spider-Man doesn't have good yellow stars and red stars, then you should consider him as a Skirmisher. Skirmisher will give him 50% more focus, and that will allow him to land the negative effects way more easy. Once again, it's not about the ultimate, because the ultimate already gets 100% extra focus. The question is the special. Is the special going to land the defense down and the slow? If you have him at really low red stars and yellow stars, that might be the case. So in that specific situation, you want to use him as a Skirmisher. Otherwise, if you have him maxed out in terms of yellow stars, and if you have 4 or 5 red stars on him, you can use him as a Raider and increase his damage output. Okay, so that's gonna be the ISO weight for OG Spider-Man. Now we have Ghost Spider, also known as Spider-Gwen. Now, in terms of ISO weight for Ghost Spider, we also have 2 options for her, and we have the context if you are using the full team or not. If you are using the full team, she will get an additional 30% crit chance, and that will allow her to apply ability block on the enemies. This will require her to crit. You have 10% crit chance from the base stats, plus you have 60% crit chance from the ability, so you need to get an additional 30% crit chance. This can come from the ISO weight Raider, or it can come from the ally SpiderPunk. So it's up to you to decide if you want to use SpiderPunk as the source of the crit chance, or if you want to use her on ISO weight as the source of the crit chance. If you go for the Raider path, you'll be also increasing her damage output from her passive ability and also from her other abilities. Now, in case you are using the full team and you don't have good yellow stars or red stars on your Ghost Spider, and you are using the full team, once again, you might consider her a Skirmisher. The benefits of Skirmisher for Ghost Spider will be that we have a higher focus to apply the ability block, because it's not guaranteed, it can get resisted. We'll also have a higher focus to apply these slows, and the special part, once again, if you are using the full team, is that you'll have the chance of applying blind to the enemies in case the enemies have slow. This blind can change matches, and having enough focus on her, it's going to be extremely important. So think about, are you going to use the full team? Do you have the crit chance of SpiderPunk? Then you can use her as a Skirmisher just to make sure that she applies the ability block and the blinds. In case you are using a hybrid team, then having the Raider isolate to guarantee the ability block, even that it can be resisted, is going to be a good option as well. Okay, so moving on, we are going to the next character. We have Scarlet Spider. Now, in terms of Scarlet Spider, we have once again two options, maybe three options. So the first option is going to be the Raider to increase his damage output. He doesn't have any ability that gives him additional crit chance like a Ghost Spider has, but he has his passive that gives him and the entire team 50% more crit damage. So because of this, we want to maximize his damage output as much as possible. Now, he has a very powerful basic that all his abilities attack multiple targets, but this guy suffers a lot from the lack of focus. None of his abilities give an additional focus, and that's going to be quite a problem. Now, this is especially important in terms of the ultimate and in terms of the basic. The special does not require extra focus, but the basic and the ultimate really require extra focus. And with this additional focus, you'll be able to clear positive effects from the enemies, and this is going to be extremely important when you are doing raids. You always face enemies that have immunity, defense up and so on, and having that additional focus will help him to remove all of those effects. His basic attack also applies defense down, offense down and slow. This offense down is very important. He is the only source of offense down on this team, so you really want it to stick to the enemies to make sure that the enemies will do reduced damage to you. Now, there is also another additional option, but I don't consider this one so good, which is the Striker isolate, and that will guarantee that we do one additional attack with this basic, and that will give us one additional chance of applying offense down, slow and defense down to a single target. Now, I don't really think that this is going to be important. The damage output is nice, but it's not super crazy, especially when you rely so much on the crit chance and crit damage, so I would definitely not recommend this as a priority option. The first and priority option should be Raider to maximize his damage output, but if you have him at really low yellow stars and red stars, then you might consider the Skirmisher isolate just to make sure that the ultimate and the basic are working correctly. Now we are moving on to Miles, and the isolate for Miles, the answer is quite simple. It's just Striker, because he does mostly single target damage with his abilities, with the basic, with the special. They don't require additional focus, and usually Miles goes after the other characters or between the other characters, and that means that they will already have a defense down, or that they will already have some kind of other status effect that will help him to do his abilities. Also, his passive applies offense down to the enemies, so that's going to be something good as well. So in terms of isolate for him, I definitely recommend him to be a Striker, because whenever he does any of his abilities, he will double tap twice, and that will allow him to clear 3 positive effects from the enemies. Now, in terms of Skirmisher isolate, it could be a good second option maybe, because of the increased focus, The ultimate itself does not require additional focus, as you get a bunch thanks to it, but the basic would require a little bit. So in terms, if you are trying to increase the damage output of Miles and his utility, definitely go for the Striker. In case you really think that you need extra focus, go for the Skirmisher, but this is extremely unlikely and you should definitely avoid it. Now, why not Raider for Miles? The reason why we are not using Raider for Miles, it's because we lose in terms of utility and in terms of the buff removal, and because he only has one ability that attacks multiple targets, the benefits of the Raider ISO 8 are not going to be so impactful. So finally, and to finish it off, in my opinion, it should be Striker, and the second best option, but like a Striker 95% of the times, and then 5% of the times Skirmisher, but very low chance of being a Skirmisher. Okay, so finally we have SpiderPunk, and SpiderPunk doesn't have any abilities that require extra focus. His ISO 8 attack is not anything special, and he has good stats like every other web warrior. He has a nice amount of health and a nice amount of armor. So the only option that I would consider in terms of ISO 8 for SpiderPunk would be Raider. He gets 30% additional crit from his passive, so that means that the ISO 8 from Raider will always give a lot more damage, and you also have the chance of applying more vulnerabilities and so on. So for him, I don't think there is a complex answer about it. Once again, Striker doesn't provide any additional effects with or any additional utility with the ISO 8 attack. In terms of Skirmisher, the negative effects that he applies does not really require any kind of additional focus, and he is one of the slowest characters on the team, so he will always go last, and that means here 117 spin, and that means that the enemies will always have defense down, and that by itself will increase your chance of applying the slow. So once again, and finally, we have SpiderPunk as a Raider as best ISO 8. So yeah guys, that's gonna be the video. I hope you guys enjoy it. My ISO 8 recommendations for the web warriors, depending on different scenarios, if you are using the full team or if you are using the hybrid team, and if you have your characters with low yellow stars and low red stars, or in case you have them with high red stars and high yellow stars. So I hope you guys enjoyed this information. I hope it was clear and logic enough to justify my points, and if you found information helpful, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you are new to my channel, make sure you subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and I will catch you guys later.